Chapter 20, Sniper Forensics. The foundation for successful countersniping. Effective counterinsurgency forces have at their foundation a forensic mindset. This forensic approach enables security forces to take a discriminatory approach to countersniping operation. This discrimination minimizes civilian casualties, reduces infrastructure damage, and therefore limits a guerrilla organization's most potent weapon: bad press, which shows government security forces as incompetent at best and murderous at worst. Importantly, forensic investigation is a way for security forces to pick the lone guerrilla out of the sea of people. Plus, forensic investigation increases the guerrilla sniper's problems. Even if the shooter escapes the government's massive firepower or immediate dragnet of security forces, a competent team of investigators may still run them to the ground. These investigators may not get the sniper right away, but they will collect evidence over the course of days, weeks, months, and even years, leading to eventual exposure of the sniper. However, every war is different, and guerrilla snipers face varying levels of forensic scrutiny depending on their own unique operational environment. We will briefly look at the forensic situations in Northern Ireland, Chechnya, and Iraq, as they are some of the most recent experiences and were fought by the most advanced militaries in the world. The IRA in Northern Ireland, 1969 to 1998. In Northern Ireland, the British's 20,000 soldiers and the 8,000-man Royal Ulster Constabulary, RUC, possessed an excellent forensic capability. As a result, IRA snipers were extremely thorough in their counter-forensic approach. Even the slightest clue, like a fingerprint or a drop of blood, could incriminate and expose an IRA shooter. Importantly, the war in Northern Ireland was small, almost microscopic, when compared to other wars. For example, some estimates placed the IRA's average operational strength at about 300 active fighters, operating in a country with a population of only 1.5 million people. British investigators faced relatively few guerrilla fighters and perhaps a dozen dedicated snipers at any one time. The IRA had to practice extreme forensic discipline to survive under such scrutiny. Because the British Army and Northern Ireland security forces, like the RUC, had to operate with restraint, blowing up Irish family residences to get an IRA sniper was politically unacceptable, IRA gunmen worried little about being killed during their attack. However, the gunmen were very concerned with the British's investigative dragnet that would produce mind-bending interrogation sessions, suffocating surveillance, and unrelenting harassment of IRA suspects. The greatest threat to the IRA sniper was not the immediate reaction by their victims. It was the government's long-term investigation backed up by an aggressive team of forensic detectives and specialists. Chechen rebels, 1994 to 2006. Chechnya, like Northern Ireland, also had a small population of only 1.1 million people. The resistance movement there was estimated at its peak at 10,000 fighters with an undetermined amount of supporters. It is likely a majority of the population, which hated the Russians, undermined the Russian occupation in some form. In Chechnya, the Russians face the same problem every foreign occupier does. They did not speak the language, and they did not fit in with the population. The Russians' 100,000-man army occupying Chechnya was a conscript force with a low degree of overall professionalism and counterinsurgency competence. As a result, the Russians' ability to conduct battlefield investigations was poor, and their indigenous surrogates, the Chechen government, corrupt, infiltrated, and inept. Because of these problems, the Russian military and Chechen government were unable to conduct the investigations required to track down all the snipers they faced. Unlike the British security forces, the Russian military policy towards Chechen guerrilla snipers was one of massive force and overwhelming response, even if these resulted in debilitating structural damage and widespread civilian deaths. All suspected guerrillas were captured and tortured in filtration camps as a matter of policy, and suspected guerrilla snipers were tortured then killed. Therefore, the Chechen guerrilla sniper was most concerned with escaping immediate Russian firepower after a shooting. The Russians would bomb an entire city block to get one sniper, and then avoid the suspicion of being a guerrilla. The Russians were not overly concerned with forensic evidence. A suspected Chechen who fit the Russian profile for a guerrilla sniper was simply killed just to be on the safe side. The Iraqi insurgents, 2003 to 2008. Consider the situation the American military faced in Iraq. Iraq had a population estimated at 27 million people, and Baghdad alone, with a population estimated at 6 million people, had more people than all of Northern Ireland and Chechnya combined. High-end estimates of the Iraq insurgency topped out at 20,000 active fighters with 250,000 dedicated supporters. Among all these fighters, America's 140,000-man army may have faced 100 individual snipers. In a conflict of such magnitude, where close to 40,000 individual insurgent attacks were recorded in 2005 alone, the American and Iraqi government battlefield investigative ability was simply overwhelmed. As with any conventional army, the American army was not designed to conduct widespread battlefield investigations, and thus found itself unable to successfully and thoroughly follow up most sniper attacks. If an insurgent sniper was not immediately detected and captured after a shooting, they would most likely get away with their attack. As a result, the Iraqi insurgent sniper was worried most about making an immediate escape as opposed to withstanding the scrutiny of a prolonged investigation. Furthermore, because American soldiers did not speak the language and did not blend into Iraqi society, their ability to conduct investigations was limited. Compounding the problem was their indigenous surrogates. The Iraqi police suffered from widespread corruption, professional ineptness, and insurgent infiltration. As a result, an Iraqi insurgent had a much better chance of getting away with repeated sniper attacks than did IRA snipers operating in Northern Ireland. And since the U.S. military was more restrained and disciplined than the Russians in Chechnya, they rarely used massive firepower to kill a lone shooter. The IRA's forensic discipline. While all guerrillas make an effort to get away with their activities, the IRA took their operations to a higher level of counter-forensic discipline. The IRA had to achieve a new forensic plateau because they faced, arguably, the best counterinsurgency forces in the world. The British Special Air Service, SAS, the 14th Military Intelligence Security Company, and the Royal Ulster Constabulary combined to make a formidable collection of counterinsurgency specialists. Through sheer survival of the fittest, the IRA had to either adapt to their enemy or collapse as an organization. The IRA adapted. In fact, the IRA displayed some of the most sophisticated urban guerrilla warfare methodology seen in any conflict to date. As part of this adaptive process, the IRA studied the British authorities' forensic capabilities. After fighting for decades and having hundreds of its members incarcerated, investigated, and questioned, the IRA as a whole formed a large pool of counter-forensic knowledge. Consequently, the IRA leadership tapped into this pool and created a counter-forensics manual, which it published and distributed to IRA members. Author Tony Garrity managed to gain access to the IRA's counter-forensics manual in this work, The Irish War, and revealed the IRA's level of counter-forensics instruction. The IRA leadership understood the seriousness of the forensic threat, and the manual clearly relays this. Just as we find it absolutely necessary to understand the enemy's interrogation techniques or surveillance and to train to overcome such obstacles, so too we must tackle the problem of forensic science. We cannot afford to lose Oglay volunteers at any time, much less through sloppy preparation or execution of any operation. Not only can it cause us major problems in our operational capacity, but the political mileage we achieve from a successful operation can be lost or at the very least reduced due to arrests. The manual recognizes the tactics and thoroughness of the RUC, explaining their investigative procedures. They will seek out witnesses, not solely for identification, but to establish the sequence of events. Who came from where, who did what, was a vehicle used, what time did it happen, etc. It allows them, with their forensic scientists, to search for the type of evidence they would expect to find associated with the type of operation. It may be useful to employ a delaying tactic